What we're going to talk about is spy cops. Guardian, October 2020. The public inquiry into undercover policing might never have happened were it not for a chance discovery in a van in Italy. Lisa Jones was having a blissful holiday in July 2010, touring the mountains with her boyfriend, an environmental activist who went by the name Mark Stone. Searching for her sunglasses in the glove compartment, her hand pressed against the leather cover of a British passport. Inside, she saw her boyfriend's photo beside a stranger's name, Mark Kennedy. She then found a mobile phone containing emails from two children, calling her boyfriend Dad. The personal trauma of that discovery set in train a series of events that began to unravel what many regard as one of the most closely guarded secrets in British policing history. When Lisa Jones, who uses a pseudonym, and her friends established that Kennedy was a police officer who had been spying on climate change activists, the story caused a firestorm, collapsing a major trial and quashing the conviction of environmental activists who had been prosecuted for conspiring to shut down one of the UK's biggest power stations. So the first point to note about this is this might still not be known to anyone outside a small group of select group of Scotland Yard police officers if it hadn't been that this person who was going out with what they thought was an environmental activist found the real identity of this police officer back in 2010. Senior officers tried to quell the outcry, insisting Kennedy was merely a rogue officer. In fact, the opposite was true. Kennedy was the latest foot soldier in a very long line of undercover police who had been routinely infiltrating political groups, mostly on the left, since as far back as 1968. It's very similar to, I don't know if you saw Adam Curtis's Can't Get You Out of My Head. In one of those episodes, he talks about Panther 21. There were Black Panthers in New York.
Yeah.
And it was exactly the same thing. And I just bring that up because what happens with this particular police officer after this story's broke and after these trials collapse is everyone agrees that this is like a one-off.
Yeah.
Like this is a really weird thing that's happened. The existence of a squad of police officers sent deep undercover in political groups was so top secret that many of the UK's most senior officers were completely oblivious until they began reading reports in The Guardian 10 years ago. Over more than 4 decades, at least 139 police officers were given fake identities to closely monitor the inner workings of more than 1,000 political groups.
And loads of them, at least, encouraging illegal activity by those groups.
Yeah, seemingly.
Or even leading it.
Leading. There probably wouldn't have been any left-wing activism in this country for 50 years if it wasn't for the police.
If it wasn't for the police. Yeah, why would they do any activism? They'd just be hanging around
smoking weed. Sticks. Yeah. So, like, basically everything that's happened. Probably the police are the most progressive organization in this country. There's so many great.
There probably wouldn't have been like gay weddings if it hadn't been for the Metropolitan
no gay rights.
Police.
Their deployment typically lasted 4 to 5 years, with officers living alongside political campaigners
and wrecking everyone's lives involved,
forming deep bonds of friendship or romantic liaisons with their targets. At least 3 of the police spies fathered children with women they met while undercover.
Oh, that's not that many. I thought it would be more than that. I thought that they would really get into the marriage game, but it's only 3 out of the 100 or so.
Well, I think having kids. I mean, I imagine many of them had sex with lots of women. But to actually fucking father a child with someone they don't even know your real name, and you already have a family. I mean, some people are into it, sure, but you know, there's only 139 police officers, Matt.
Yeah.
In fact, the 3 of them did it. I think
it's quite bad. You think that's quite bad? I'm like, that's fairly low numbers.
Yeah.
I'm already quite immune to this story. I'm like, sounds like the police are doing.
They're obviously doing the right checks. So only 3 got through. Many others. Well, this is a bit morbid. So many others were instructed by their superiors to adopt the identities of dead children to lend credibility to their aliases. With some, in a macabre ritual, even visiting the graves of the deceased children whose identities they were using. One of the most notorious police spies, Bob Lambert, who adopted the identity of a 7-year-old boy who had died of a congenital heart defect in 1959, is also accused of turning provocateur, setting fire to a branch of Debenhams while undercover in the 1980s. He denies the charges. Lambert, who fathered a child while posing as Bob Robinson, was promoted to a senior manager role in the SDS. He later received an MBE for services to policing. The public inquiry into what became known as the Spy Cop scandal was announced by Theresa May in 2014 when she was Home Secretary. Her decision followed years of disclosures unearthed by The Guardian and activists who had been spied on. But it was the revelation by a whistleblower, Peter Francis, that appears to have tipped the balance. A former SDS officer, Francis, revealed how police spied on the family campaign of Stephen Lawrence, the teenager murdered by racists. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, once you have the thing set up, why wouldn't you use it? So the Stephen Lawrence case was a real problem for the police because it was talking about problems systemic in the police, about things like racism, right? So, of course, you have a system in place that spies on political campaign groups. You're going to use it, right? Guardian, January 2011. Activists walk free as undercover officer prompts collapse of case. In a statement, the CPS said, previously unavailable information that significantly undermined the prosecution's case came to light on Wednesday, the 5th of January, 2011. In light of this information, the Crown Prosecution Service reviewed the case and decided that there was no longer sufficient evidence for a realistic prospect of conviction. Previously unavailable information. Now, who was concealing that information? The police, right?
Yeah.
Who was head of the CPS at the time?
Oh, Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer, right. So that's
so would he have been aware?
Would he have been aware? That's the key question. Starmer is very often, this is one of the sort of motifs of Starmer's career, is that when things like this happen, Starmer's never aware. He's a very good leader, very good boss. Yeah. Just not very aware of what's going on in the organizations that he's running. Anyway,
McCavity.
Mark Kennedy's case.
Master of depravity.
CPS stands accused of misleading courts over the collapse of a trial against 6 environmentalist activists. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer QC, has requested an independent investigation into claims as disclosed on Tuesday that the CPS misled courts over the collapse of a trial against 6 activists accused of conspiring to break into Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station. So, you were saying, was Keir Starmer aware?
Was he aware?
Well, I don't know, but he definitely was aware now because he launched this investigation, right?
Yeah.
And he obviously must have been furious. This case has collapsed. This thing that was the undercover police, this information wasn't coming out in the court. He was unaware. So he's doing an investigation. He brings in Sir Christopher Rose. This was the Rose Report. The remit of the Rose Report was to look into this one case in particular. And by looking into this one case in particular, they found that there was no other cases that were happening.
It's reassuring.
Yeah.
Just
and they also found there was no systemic failure, even though they said that there was failures on multiple levels. So it was a very strange report from what I can understand.
Well, it's very reassuring.
Yeah. A spokesperson for the Crown Prosecution Service confirmed that Ian Cunningham, the senior lawyer in charge of the prosecution, was the main person at fault with this. So they said that there'd been multiple failures over many months and at more than one level, to quote the report, but that this Ian Cunningham, lead prosecutor, had to bear primary responsibility for the failure. Now, this is another thing that is quite reoccurring in this situation. Ian Cunningham, during the disciplinary process, retired, which is just too bad, because otherwise he really would have got it. They really would have stuck it to him, but he just happened to be, even though lots of people were obviously involved, there was failures on multiple level, he was the main guy, and that's who they were going to stick it to, but he just happened to retire at the time. So that's too bad. Anyway, going back to Keir Starmer, this is Channel 4, December 2011. Asked by Channel 4 News if there was any other cases that should be investigated, he said, if Sir Christopher Rose had found systemic problems, then I would quite accept perhaps a retrospective look at all of the cases. But he didn't. He found individual failings.
Mm.
So that was Keir
Woo.
Starmer, December 2011, after a full investigation. Now, what happened for the next 10 years? Many, 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 many other cases were found from all over decades, hundreds of police
Mm.
officers, thousands of groups infiltrated. So he couldn't have been more wrong,
Mm.
unfortunately. So, as I was saying, this was in 2020, right? When all of this was really coming out and they were having the investigation. And this is an article from March the 18th, 2020. Now, March the 18th is my birthday. So I remember this week very well because this was the week that at the beginning of the week, Boris Johnson had said we should probably keep our distance if we can. And by
Mm.
the end of that week, there was a full lockdown in the
Mm.
UK.
Mm.
So it was a hell of a week to be alive. And
Mm.
this story came out on March the 18th, and God knows who actually read it at the time. Undercover policing inquiry, secretive Met unit, shredded files. Watchdog says intelligence officers destroyed documents despite being told to keep them. A secretive Scotland Yard intelligence unit shredded a large number of documents after a public inquiry was set up into the undercover infiltration of political groups, a watchdog has found. The Independent Office of Police Complaints announced on Wednesday that it had found that the documents had been destroyed despite an instruction that they had to be preserved. The watchdog found that an unnamed officer would have faced a disciplinary hearing on the charge of gross misconduct if they had not already retired.
Mm.
The person that had shredded all of the thing, he did it on his last day. It's
Yeah,
like,
you definitely need a person about to retire in your
yeah,
organization.
yeah. Well, you need a series of people. You sort of have to line them up. So day by day, if you've got any tasks that day that need doing, you've got someone who's retiring today. Get him in here.
Yeah.
I need some files shredded.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's last day is just
Just
whenever you
shredding
get
files.
to 64, your whole day at work is just fucking
Yeah.
hell. Got to shred these
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
documents.
It's like the
All they're
day
doing, just chucking old bags of coke down a toilet.
the day before you retire. It's like so tomorrow you'll be shredding it. I want to show you. I want to show you how the shredder works because you need to be as soon as you come in at 9 a.m. You need to be on
Yeah.
it. We've got a lot backed up here.
Yeah. Every organization in Britain related to national security or anything.
That's why people don't want to change their retirement age. So that's the Spice Cops scandal, right?
That was a cutting edge story from 2020 that you
Yes,
really laid
exactly.
out there.
Yeah,
Fucking
very timely.
amazing.
But then, right? So what happened after the Spy Cop scandal? Obviously, everyone was very
Something this year.
scandalized. Uh, and what did the government decide to do about it?
Shred it.
They did a Barack Obama on it, and they said, "Well, this is really terrible that all this illegal stuff's happening. We should really legalize it." And that's what they've done.
Oh my God, what they've legalized infiltrating families and
Yeah.
shit.
So legalize the scandal. So March 2021, Covert Human Intelligence Sources Criminal Conduct Act. The act was passed in 2021, but it was sort of first brought up in November 2020, just in the middle of this fucking spy cop scandal. They were already bringing in this act. This is what the Independent newspaper had to say about it. Government spy cops law would sanction murder and rape by undercover police, MPs warn. Parliament's Joint Committee on Human Rights said the proposed law raises the abhorrent possibility of serious crimes such as rape, murder, and torture being carried out under an authorization. Also, while this law was coming in, the 4th of February 2021, The Guardian reported, undercover policing inquiry, Keir Starmer urged to give evidence. Campaigners are asking whether Labour leader was involved in a cover-up when he was in charge of the CPS. A group of environmental campaigners want Keir Starmer to give evidence to the public inquiry into undercover policing amid questions over whether he was involved in a cover-up while he was Director of Public Prosecutions for England and Wales. He needs to get to retirement and quick.
Yeah, I think he is retirement age, isn't he? Isn't he
Yeah, he is.
64?
If only he didn't become prime minister.
Perfect.
They are demanding to know if the Labour leader helped to conceal how the actions of undercover officers caused the wrongful prosecutions of themselves and other campaigners.
And is
So,
something happening about this now?
no, it's all over now. But
Is it fixed?
Starmer decided not to go to the inquiry, obviously. I think in this particular case, I'm not sure he's done anything wrong. Although a lot of campaigners imagine that he might have. There's lots of good reasons to think that he did personally cover up what was going on. I mean, who knows? But the point is that he didn't do anything right.
Well,
Like
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
thing. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
see these kind of issues happening,
Mm,
and instead of actually really looking into it and trying to get
mm,
justice for people, you think, I don't want to cause a fuss. I just want to
mm,
progress my own career.
mm,
And
mm,
I think there's a broader issue here, which is that this is something that people have obviously always hated, but like particularly in this political moment, there's like people have issue with this thing called the deep state and the
mm, mm,
way that power functions,
mm,
and the fact that the people involved in it aren't really looking out for, they're not really serving the people that
mm,
the organizations are set up to serve. They're actually just serving the interests of the powerful, right? And Keir Starmer is just such a prime example of that.
mm.
And for him to now sort of become the prime minister of this country at this particular time, it's just such an obviously disastrous route for the Labour Party to take. On
Mm.
top of everything else that the Labour Party are getting wrong, like him personally and his actual career is just such an example of what people really have come to detest.
I don't know if you were going to mention it as well, but I mean, with WikiLeaks as well. I mean, that was a case where Keir Starmer appeared to be an important figure uh, in screwing up Julian Assange's fortunes as well.
We always bring up the Trilateral Commission, but his time as head of the CPS, some of the organizations he's moved in over the years, some of the people that he knows, obviously his own personal politics, and the actions that he's taken in his political
Mm,
life and professional life outside of politics are very, very deep statey
mm,
in
yeah,
what
yeah,
in
yeah.
what he's doing. And yeah, there's loads of stuff we could bring up. I wanted to focus on spy cops today. Probably
Mm.
not a good idea. It wasn't that interesting, really. But I would like also, as we go through the crimes of Keir Starmer, to look at all sorts of stuff, and definitely Julian Assange. So many things that happen at the CPS,
Don't you dare get cold feet was the email
including
from the Crown Prosecution Service
yeah,
about the
including and the
Assange
post
case.
office scandal.
Oh, okay. I don't know much about that one
I
either,
mean, there's
so that'd be interesting.
basically so many things happened. These are the thing. This is why I didn't want to be too harsh on Keir Starmer specifically today. I definitely will be another day. But I mean, like these are ongoing issues. I mean, the thing with Julian Assange, there was multiple prime ministers, multiple whatever you call it, DPPs, head of what's it called? Yeah, DPP, right? The head of the CPS,
Oh,
Director
right.
of
Yeah.
Public Prosecutions.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so there were multiple ones of them. There was multiple prime ministers for the post office scandal, for Julian Assange case, and even for the spy cops thing. The point is that they were all on running in some it's some kind of evolution of the situation while Keir Starmer was in power. And in every case, he sort of aided the the narrative of the government of whatever was
And the authoritarian
the
narrative.
authoritarian of the of the police state, basically,
Mm, mm,
of either the Secret Service or the police itself or the government at the time, which is almost always Tory.
mm.
Not that it matters when it's Labour anyway. But yeah, rather than looking for the truth or getting justice for any of the victims involved,